Yeah, could you? Okay, so when we start, you will give me the okay from the back for me to start, and then you'll have the YouTube thing all set
I've
to
already
go.
got it up.
It's already up. So the minute when they're all sat down and everything, and I'll say good morning to everybody, then I'll look at you and you'll give me a thumbs up. And this will be live at that point.
Yes.
Got it. Yes.
Hi, Paula.
Yes.
I just wondered, Wendy Brody has a memorial,
Oh, are they finally doing it?
and they're doing it on June 4th at 3 o'clock at the Conrad.
Yes.
Do you think, I mean, there are people here who knew her lightly,
Yes.
just spoke to her, and
Yeah.
some good friends. Do you think you should mention it?
You know,
How
Paula,
do we handle these
we have a problem because if we do things for one person and not for another,
Got it.
the other family gets incredibly upset.
Got it.
And so what we've done is put things in the spin drift, but we
Right.
haven't done e-blasts
Right.
and we haven't made announcements. But I don't know, I mean, because this was so delayed from the original,
Exactly.
maybe we could say, maybe I could just say something. I just don't want to offend
I
anybody
know,
else.
I
And,
know.
you know, and the other thing is not to give incorrect information.
Yes.
Because we're terrified we're going to say someone's died and they haven't, you know, and all
did
of
that
this
once.
stuff.
Yes,
It's,
yeah.
it's,
Could be horrible.
but it's on the 4th, did you
It's
say?
on the 4th
At
at
3
3 o'clock
o'clock
at the Conrad, but they need to RSVP. They need the people here to know how many are coming.
And who do they RSVP?
To her daughter,
Which one?
Ingrid.
Ingrid. I don't know what is it. You know, it's such a downer.
Well, what I've done is I've spoken to a couple of people who know, like Nan.
You want
Yes,
me to pass it around as well?
Yeah.
Everybody I know.
Yes, that there is in fact, what I could do is send you,
If you send me the RSVP.
I'll send you the RSVP.
You know, let me do that. Let me send out some emails to the people that I know work with her and knew her, and she was such a lovely
See,
woman.
we'll do
Oh,
this.
it's so beautiful. I really liked it. I have to tell you that her death affected me more than so many have. I was so shocked.
I'm going to send you this.
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
let's see.
And I will get it out to as many people as I can.
And
on
just,
a personal
just to
level.
people who
Yeah,
you
yeah,
think
yeah. I think that's better.
um,
Would be interested.
who would be. So if I put it in photos, just really quickly.
When she did the program, who did she do it with?
Me.
She did it with you, so I don't need to do that.
So I'm going to send it to Roz.
Susan Roslin, they can do that. That's our
Okay.
joint.
Send it to you.
Okay, and I will get it out to as many people as I think. I think it's better to do it personally.
But,
Yeah.
but do say you must
RSVP to Ingrid.
Yeah.
I have to go
Okay.
ring the bell.
Thank you.
Let me go find the bell first.
Thank you so much.
No, thank you for letting me know about that, because I was wondering what had happened. I thought maybe they weren't doing it.
What's it illustrated doing?
What?
Those four.
Yeah, those four.
Look at this one here, though. The one down below. Not below, right here. On the strip. What's it those are doing it? Yeah. When this one out?
Yeah. Well, you tried. I literally just not meant for this size.
That was it meant for. Big one?
Probably, or at least something up.
We could raise this up more.
Does this tingle?
No.
No?
Fine.
Here, hold the other side.
You bet. Pressure on it? I think this goes up higher.
Does it?
Yeah, another notch.
Goes up another notch. Let's do that. Trying to get it. It's a weird projector because it's like projecting up. Does it need to go? If it gets closer, it gets smaller. So we can move it closer.
Okay, we're about to.
I just don't want to go.
I think it's as good as we're going to get. That's perfect. Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah. Sandy, I have to tell you, I saw a picture on, I don't know if it was on Facebook or Instagram. I think my daughter sent it of Michelle with Marty and Barbara. Barbara looked fabulous. She looked, she looked lovely. I mean, she just looked happy and vivacious. And so happy. They got together. No, but she Okay, so it's going to be a brief, I'm going to do a brief talk, and then it's going to be Sandy doing the revision of bylaws, and then it's going to be me doing the installation of officers. There's no committee reports, we're not hearing about jacaranda trees. They are, we don't need to talk about them, right? She's got COVID, but she's fine. But she's still testing positive, very faintly positive. So I'm like, if somebody gets it, they'll blame you. Don't come. No. And luckily, I haven't seen her for several weeks, so I'm just really pleased about that. Is this on? Good morning, everybody. If everybody can come and take a seat, we will start in a couple of moments. I would like to go ahead and call the meeting to order and to welcome everybody to the last speaker meeting of the 2021-22 year. We would, unfortunately, my co-chair, Susan, can't be here today. She's recovering from COVID. She is just fine, but she is still testing positive, and so she couldn't be here today. But on behalf of her and of me, I would like to thank every one of you for sticking with us this year. It's been very tricky, I know, but we hope that those of you who have come to the meetings in person and those who've seen them on YouTube, we just thank you all for being a part of the Garden Club. And we are hoping that as we go on to next year, we are going to bloom again. And that's probably what our logo will be for the year, is Let's Bloom Again. In order to do that, we are hoping that we're going to be able to have local field trips, a garden tour, and lots of workshops to really get us all back together again. And in order to do that, we are going to need help from all our members. During the next few weeks, Susan and I are going to be calling people and asking them to be on committees or to co-chair committees, and we're keeping our fingers crossed that you will help us do that. If when we call, what we suggest is not something that you feel is what you want to do, please don't just say no, just tell us what other things you might be willing to do. Because the only way that we're going to get back to where we were is if people participate. And we do understand that during COVID, a lot of people have rethought their priorities and have decided that they don't want to commit to as many things. There's a little bit unknown about what's coming in the future virus-wise. But please, please, please help us as much as you can. So the more help we get, the better the club will be, and the better we can kickstart it back to where it used to be. If you can't bear the thought of not being part of the Garden Club during the summer, the California Garden Club convention is actually in San Diego this year. And so they are holding their convention at the Handley Hotel down in the Hotel Circle on June 6th to 10th. And you can go online, just type in California Garden Club Convention, and all the details come up if you are interested in being a part of that. We do have a couple of little business things, very important ones actually, before we actually get to our speaker. And so the first one is a revision of bylaws. We need a membership vote on that. So if Sandy can come up and tell us what we've been doing right and what we've been doing wrong, that would be great.
Good morning. It's nice to see all of you here. We will get back to normal. I agree. I think we will. We have just a little bit of business to do here. This year, we have done something that we decided sort of a big job, but we would restate the bylaws. We have been changing them and amending them over the years to go along with what's been happening, but we're trying to do something to make it simpler so that it will be less complicated and easier to understand. Before we go any further, I want to tell you, you all need to know how important it is that we have bylaws and that we have standing rules. We are, first of all, members of a district, Palomar District. We are members of the California Garden Club. We are a member of the National Garden Club. We are a 501c3, which means we are a not-for-profit organization. All of these things make requirements for us, so the bylaws are really a protection for us. We also pay taxes. Did you all know we paid taxes? And that we all have liability insurance? And actually, the last thing has to do with the dissolvement of a club, which we hope will never happen. But you have to go to the national and get exact wording for that bylaw so that things are done according to Hoyle. So this morning, we are going to do a restatement of the bylaws. I hope you all had a chance to look at it in your website. Did any of you look it up on the website to see? Other than my partner here, to see what we had changed. It's to make it a little easier. We have taken out the word co. The word co is no longer going to be used for co-presidents. Co is going to be presidents with an parentheses and an S, so that we can go back normally to a one-person office if we need to. And we don't have to change the bylaws. So that made it a lot easier. And now we have to do the same thing in the yearbook. But I think it will make things a lot less confusing and a little bit easier to follow. So the executive committee has worked very hard on this. And I will tell you, the only thing that we changed in the standing rules was the spindrifter is now listed as the spindrift. So that was something that was necessary because that was a change. Other than that, it's much the same. So we are going to vote on the restatement of the bylaws as they were printed in your website, and then also the standing rules as such. We'll do it on both of them. So all of you have a vote if you are a life member or if you are an active member. And we will do it by a voice vote, which makes it a lot simpler. Are there any questions before we ask for the vote? Wonderful. Good. All right. I would like to propose that we approve the bylaws as stated in the website for the changes, the amendment. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Now I would like to, thank you very much. I would like to ask for this, the approval of the standing rules as they are approved, as they were written in the website. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Wonderful. Now these will be reflected in your new yearbooks, which will be coming out at the end of the summer. They will be all, changed to agree with our bylaws and our standing rules. I think it will make it a lot easier to understand. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
And now we're going to have the installation of officers for the year 2022-23. So if Anne and Nan can take over.
Thank you, Roz. It's very nice to be here at the podium again after so many years. And as we prepare to install our new officers, could I ask all the officers, both old and new, to please come forward? Come over and stand here. All the officers. Can you hear me okay? Is this microphone in the right place? Most of you will Stand right here, Susan. Most of you will be continuing in your roles for another year. Only Susan Starr will be retiring at the end of this year. And Susan, I wanted to take an opportunity to thank you. You've done so many things for the club. And just to thank you, I prepared you a small bouquet of flowers that mostly came from my garden, except for that beautiful pink peony. But the flowers that I chose for your little bouquet are pink roses, sweet peas, hydrangeas, and some other flowers. And those represent gratitude, which I sincerely express to you. And the other flowers are carnations, and they carry the message that we will remember you. So I think all of you will join me in thanking Susan for a job well done. Thank you so much. And Susan, I can now officially discharge you of all your duties. However, I see you're taking notes. So I'm not sure I want to discharge you until the end of this day. Okay, for the remaining officers who served us so beautifully during the past year, I really want to give you my sincere thanks. You've carried forward the traditions of the club through difficult and uncertain times, and you've been adaptable when the times dictated it. It's a marvel to me that you were able to secure the quality speakers and put on the quality of programs that you did. Thank you all for being so flexible and working so hard to keep our programs going. If there were a flower that represented fleetness of foot, nimbleness, agility, I would have a huge bouquet for each of you. But unfortunately, most of these attributes are signified in trees. So I'm sending you images of a willow, a birch, or bamboo. And now to the new officers, the membership has shown its confidence in you by electing you to the following offices. It's now time for you to assume your duties and responsibilities of your position. As members of the Garden Club, we all enjoy plants and flowers. There's a rich lore to the history of flowers. It stems back to biblical times, ancient Roman and Greek times, and traditionally, there's also a color associated with each of your offices. And so I've attempted to make a small bouquet for each of you that represents your color, but also some flowers that might carry special meaning, that will express our gratitude to you, give you courage, give you creativity, whatever it takes for you to do your job. I think the history behind these small bouquets, which I call a tussy-mussy, Sherry, I think sometimes they're called posies. There's a very long history to these sorts of bouquets. It goes all the way back to medieval times when people would put a nosegay on their lapel or carry a small bouquet of flowers to ward off the bad smells of the street, but also they thought to protect them from illness. And those little tussy-mussy or nosegays often contained a lot of herbs, rosemary and things that were scented, and they thought that was the best that they could do to get through the day. Now, during the time of Queen Victoria, small bouquets like this were made and were given to people, and each flower in that bouquet had a specific meaning. And so when you were creating your bouquet, you really had to think about what your message was. And so I took these two things and I thought, let's have fun with it. Let's make some bouquets that tell us what we think of you and what we wish for you in the years to come. The first person I had was a treasurer, but Cindy Lococo is not here. And Cindy is the custodian of our funds, and well, what else? She keeps all the financial records. She has a phenomenal job and has done a phenomenal job for a number of years. And so I made her a bouquet that was essentially green, and I was very happy because two of my favorite flowers are green. They're the little tiny hellebore and the hydrangea. And I want you to know what the hellebore represents. It has a number of meanings. Some of them are not this good, but I'll tell you the good meanings. They represent serenity, tranquility, and peace, as well as toughness and a calm mind. And the alstroemeria, which are in that bouquet, represent wealth and prosperity. So there are other flowers expressing gratitude, but that was unfortunate. That was for Cindy, who can't be here. Now, corresponding secretary, Leslie. Leslie's not here. Leslie's the pink one. I'm going to just tell you what the bouquet is, and somebody can hopefully deliver it to Leslie. Leslie's job is to keep in touch with the members and friends of the club, and her color is pink. It symbolizes grace and gentility. And for her bouquet, I chose pink roses, a peony, Gerber daisies, zinnias, and sweet peas. Pink roses signify grace and happiness. Gerbers express cheerfulness, and sweet peas and peonies represent happiness. Zinnias also carry the specific message, I'm thinking of you when you're not here. Okay, the next, Liz Armstrong, our recording secretaries, Liz Armstrong and Jean Thomas. Jean? Good, I'm glad you're here. It feels good to have a real live officer in our presence. You're the recording secretary, and it's your responsibility to record the proceedings of the meetings. Your color is white, symbolizing purity, honesty, and humility, as well as the blank page. Your flowers are the white hydrangea, white roses, alstroemeria, and a gardenia. Now, the gardenia symbolizes trust, love, respect, and clarity. White roses represent a new beginning, and the white hydrangea, as well as the sweet peas, are expressions of gratitude. So may they serve you well. Okay, second vice presidents, Elaine Butts and Jeannie Smith. No way. Well, the job of the second vice presidents in our club have a really big job. They are charged with creating our workshops, and really they need to use their imagination and creativity to inspire us. And so for them, I chose the color, well, the color associated with their office is orange. And I chose Gerber daisies, tulips, and carnations. The Gerbers, as I said, represent cheerfulness. Tulips symbolize perfect love as well as a new beginning, because tulips are one of the first flowers to emerge in the spring. Orange tulips particularly convey understanding and appreciation. And you all should know that when you're selecting flowers based on their meaning, the color of a tulip or the color of a rose has very different meaning. So when you're putting together a bouquet, make sure you're saying the right thing. Now, the other flower in there are carnations, and they've been called the flower of the gods, which shows you how times have changed, because in our vernacular, carnations are kind of flower of the ordinary man, the common man. But they were, let's see, they've been called, the name carnation comes from coronation, and in Greek times they made coronation wreaths out of carnations. And so throughout history they have a much more celebratory and regal meaning than we have for them today. Okay, first vice presidents, Jean Collins and Kim DeVoe. You're the two right hands of the president, supporting their mission for the club in their absence, stepping in their roles. Most importantly, you serve as the program chairs, enlightening us with your inspiring programs and speakers that we so look forward to every month. Your color is red, bold and lively, conveying a message of excitement and energy. For you, I couldn't resist those gorgeous red peonies. Can you see those? They are a symbol of love, happiness, and honor, with the red peony in particular expressing drama and intensity. There are also Gerber daisies, sweet peas, and Queen Anne's lace. And the Queen Anne's lace, which is from my garden, when it's in the red color, embodies joyfulness, fun, and celebration. So sorry they're not here. Now, for our presidents. Oh, you are here. Oh, good. I didn't see you step forward. Good, enjoy those. Enjoy every symbolic meaning. Okay, presidents, we do have Roz. So Susan Harris and Roz Bradley, you've been given the Garden Club's highest honor. Your responsibilities are great and your duties are many. You set the course for the year, establishing our priorities and representing us in the community. You must use your wisdom and creativity to solve problems as they arise, and your impartiality to settle disputes. For all the responsibilities you assume, I want you to know that you have the full support and backing of all of us as members, along with our deep, sincere gratitude for your leadership and your service. Your color is purple, the symbol of dignity, leadership, and success. It's a color most regal and majestic, often associated with royalty. For you, I chose the hyacinth, purple tulips, alstroemeria, salvia, white roses, statice, and lavender. All these flowers have a meaning that I think expresses how we feel for you as you embark on another year of leadership. Hyacinth is the flower of the sun god Apollo. It's a symbol of peace, commitment, and beauty. It also symbolizes pride and power. The Victorians included hyacinth in celebratory bouquets. It conveys respect and gratitude. Salvia symbolizes wisdom, esteem, and also longevity. Lavender represents devotion, and statice, our very common statice, represents success. So may it be a wonderful, successful year. Good luck to all of you. Anne is going to actually give their pledge.
To the members of the Garden Club, this is our club, and like a bouquet of flowers, each one of us is unique and has something special to contribute. I ask to all of you, will you pledge your support to your officers and contribute to the club? Would you please say, I will?
I will.
And to the officers of the Village Garden Club of La Jolla, do you promise to fulfill your duties with all of your talents, the best of your abilities, retaining your enthusiasm, sense of purpose, and good humor? I will. I declare you officially installed. Congratulations.
You want to do that now? And now we're going to move on to the most important thing in the morning. I'm going to ask Kim to come up and introduce our speaker for today. And then everybody, don't forget that we have our May luncheon following the speaker in the social hall.
Thank you, Roz. Sadafumi Uchiyama is the Chief Curator and the Director of the International Japanese Garden Training Center at the Portland Japanese Garden. Sadafumi is a fourth-generation Japanese gardener, and his family has been involved in gardening for over a century. In addition to his traditional apprenticeship in Japan, Sadafumi has both a bachelor's degree and a master's degree in landscaped architecture from the University of Illinois, as well as a degree in urban planning. And he has practiced landscaped architecture throughout the US, Canada, and beyond. Representative projects include the renovation of the Osaka Garden in Chicago, the Shofu-en Japanese Garden of the Denver Botanic Gardens, the Sean Kay Japanese Garden at Duke University, and the Rolex headquarters in Dallas, Texas. Sada also teaches landscape design and construction courses throughout the U.S., and he lectures frequently in both the U.S. and Japan. He is a regular contributor to design magazines and professional journals, including Garden Design, Fine Gardening, and Luxe Magazine. Sadafumi is also devoted to fostering relations between Japanese gardens in Japan and those outside of Japan, and he spearheaded the development and establishment of the North American Japanese Garden Association, which was formally established in 2012. As garden curator, Sadafumi oversaw the extensive expansion and maintenance of the Portland Japanese Garden for 12 years, becoming its first chief curator in 2020. Everyone, please welcome Sadafumi Uchiyama.
Good afternoon. So this is just wonderful, and thank you for having me. It was a great flight down from Portland, and I thought it would take much longer, but it was 2.5 hours, the same as flying to Los Angeles. So I was really surprised, and also San Diego becomes really close to my heart, and it was a beautiful city. I've been in the United States for almost now 30 years, I believe. And I didn't intend to stay this long, but just I met my wife at the graduate school, so that was. Today I have some images from Portland Japanese Gardens, and just to show you just the 4 seasons, how the garden look and evolve. And also, we have some programs and activities that might interest you. So that's including this, the International Japanese Garden Training Center. We started 2016. So, so the garden was actually started in 1963. So next year, 2023, we'll celebrate the 60th anniversary. And 60 years is very important numbers in Japanese culture. 60 and 120 and 300, and so it goes like this, 60 increment. So next year is a very important year for us. So the garden was started as right after the war, almost just, actually idea was there already in 1954, I believe, just barely 10 years after the war, for the reconciliation and reestablishment of the friendship between the two nations. And the garden did exactly that after 60 years. So we are very happy to accomplishing our missions in the last 60 years. So let me start. The first is just simply the 4th season. Ours starts actually this time of the year. So Japanese garden, yet in the Pacific Northwest forest, it's kind of strange combination. So many guests actually from Japan pointed out it's at the eye level. It looks like exactly the gardens, something they see in Kyoto, Japan. Yet looking at and looking the big trees, and it's totally the Pacific Northwest. So it's very unique and interesting combination of the two. So this is exactly, I think, the May June of the garden looks like. Those light greens are Japanese maples. So some reason the Acer palmatum, the Japanese maple, does very well in the Pacific Northwest, actually much better than the ones we have in Japan. And some trees actually grows up to almost 20-some feet long and tall and wide. It's quite challenging, you can imagine, to maintain these trees and going up on the tree and do some pruning. So azaleas is in bloom just about this time of the year. And the garden, what we call the classic or old, the part of the garden is 5.5 acres. It consists of 5 different styles. And then later on, I'll introduce actually a new section, which we did expanded the garden in 2017. So this is just about coming, right now it's probably just 3-4 inch long little flower buds. But in about probably 2 weeks, this is what you see, the Japanese irises. So you notice that irises has different colors, but we intentionally actually kept just the light blue and purple, just to be consistent. Also the flowering season. Sometimes, it's wonderful to have flowers all the time, but in Japanese garden, we tend to have a flower in a very particular part of the year. So actually, then flowers really tells you and signify the certain sort of time of the year. And this is the tea garden. And of course, Japanese garden, so we have pine trees. I think Portland and perhaps Seattle are the probably northernmost sort of boundary for the Japanese pine trees. So we struggle to keep the pine trees healthy and looking nice. The part of the reason is, the Northwest, we have very short summer. So the black pine is coastal in nature, and they need lots of sun. So what's happened is when they don't have enough sun, the leaves actually opens. So it doesn't look like they're standing sharp, looking like a pine. Because they try to gain the sunlight, so those needle actually opens wide. So in order to keep the needle, crisp and sharp and standing, we have to do the special pruning on these. And some of you probably have, I'm just curious, how many of you have been visiting the Portland Japanese garden? Oh, that's great. But you might see the new portion after the 2017. I'll show you some of the images. So this is the famous, actually our signature Japanese maple, Acer palmatum dissectum. So it's a sort of weeping form. And when this one is in new sort of growing season now in May, and the fall in particular, October, November, we have to have a special sort of lines, and people has to take a number to take pictures. So that's very common. And I think this is the picture, images is one of the Smithsonian collection, I believe. So when I was, where was that? Must be Vietnam. I was on a Vietnam airline, and on their magazines, the front page is these pictures. And they said, "Welcome to Kyoto." I said, well, this is not quite Kyoto, Japan. So anyway, well-known maples here. And this is a dry garden, which I will have, actually I have today a second part of the presentation specific on the dry garden. So we're getting in the beginning of the fall. Those red ones are the lace leaf maples, and yellow is upright Acer palmatum. So we have, let's see, the old garden is 5.5 acres. And then we added, during the expansion, another 5 acres. So garden has been doubled almost. And we have 9 gardeners plus myself, 10 of us. So just about, 1 gardener per acre. So that's our workforce to maintain this garden. And winter is beautiful as well. And this is the same, the flat gardens. And now the gravel was covered with the snow. But you can see the snow, light snow assumes the shape of those rake patterns. It's amazing. You can almost tell a little bit of the green, but in the winter time, garden becomes very monochromatic, the black and white. It's just incredible. And especially, cloudy, snowy days, it just totally, sometimes when I said, I thought I took this picture in color, but it looks like a black and white. So when the colors, actually natural color toned down, the whole scene becomes really just a monochromatic picture. So the patterns on the right is like a checkerboard pattern. This happens only once a year. This one is associated with the moon viewing. So we rake this one only once a year, only 1 week to 10 days. And takes the 3 straight days for 2 gardeners to draw these patterns. And this is the dry garden. And this is one of the oldest, actually, part of our garden. This was done in, I believe, 1972. Again, you can see it's kind of strange in the big old growth forest, and here is the Japanese sort of gardens tacked into the forest. So we did, the 5.5 acre garden was getting a little too busy and noisy when we actually start receiving the visitorship. Came about 350, 400,000 a year. That's a lot for the 5.5 acre. So we are very concerned about the garden becomes a little too noisy and too busy because the tour bus comes and everyone just rushed right into the garden. So we decided to sort of maintain the tranquility of the old 5.5 acre. So we developed all new facility outside of the garden, which includes the cafe and some gift shop and the classrooms and some exhibition halls. All basically we take everyone outside of the garden, all activities. So people actually visit the new portion and have a cup of tea and meet friends and then go into the garden. So it's a garden has been very actually nice and quiet, despite the fact some days in summer we have probably close to 6,000 a day. That's a lot of people. But they don't go all into the 5.5 acres, so they just hang around outside. So expansion really has been helping us a lot. So we added, basically this is a totally new, so the old garden is this much, and this is a new section as well as the entrance garden. So it was 2.5 years of construction, but actually it was worth doing this. So you can see how contemporary it is. So we discuss a lot, like what kind of architecture and design. And so, of course, 5.5 acre original garden need to remain as original and more like a classic style. But outside of this 5.5 acres, we decided we have obligation to move, Japanese garden tradition forward, Japanese design forward. So we hire the architect by the name of Kengo Kumar who did the Olympic Stadium in Tokyo, and he's very capable architect, and I worked with him. So he did the buildings, and I did basically gardens and landscape outside. So this is in the foreground is we have also bonsai terrace. And a new building, exhibition hall. To the right is the cafe. So this is the inside the building. And of course, this is Pacific Northwest. So we use a lot of wood and basically demonstrate the sort of richness of the local industries. And one of the features, here I am, out in eastern Oregon selecting the rocks. These are all granite. And in Japan, this is what we call the castle wall. So Japanese castle stands on this stone setting. This is a dry set. That means no concrete behind. This is 24 feet tall. So just simply stacking the natural boulders. So I had to fight with the city's structural engineer for 6 months to get the permit. They just said, you cannot do that without concrete and any reinforcement. And then I've been saying, we've been doing that for thousands of years. So eventually they just gave in and just gave us a permit to build this one. So I told them this will stay a long time, so don't worry about any. So that's how it looks. So when you come to the new section of the garden, so that's the ones you see first. And it's a funny story that I'd like to share is, one of my projects I did, the Rolex headquarters, North American headquarters in Dallas, Texas, the place called Harwood District. It's nearby the art district. So the Rolex was building the new buildings of 18-story high. And this particular style of the dry stacked rocks actually originate in Europe. So Japanese shogun by the name of Oda Nobunaga during 17th century learned the castle in Europe was built out of stone. So he wanted to build a castle that's strong and defensible out of stone. So he started using the Japanese stonecraft to sort of copy the European castle. And over the 3 or 4 centuries, they really developed in very unique sort of Japanese style. So when I was meeting with the chairman of the Rolex and in this planning section, so I shared that story. Actually, the wall is actually from your place. So originally, he was saying, why we have to build a Japanese wall here? And I said, no. If you go back in 17th, 18th century, that's where we learned from you. So that's actually sold that sort of castle. So the building actually stand on this castle wall in the middle of the Harwood district in Dallas. So when you go to Dallas next time, it will be very interesting. Actually, the building stands on the wall is 27 feet tall. It's quite spectacular. So this is an entrance to the new expansion. And the cafe, almost like a tree house. So this is really the neighbors' favorite place. They just come in first in the morning and just hang out there for the morning. And we serve only tea. As you know, downtown Portland has plenty of coffee. So we said, well, we don't need to serve the coffee, but the green teas. Right? And some of the activities we have, of course, the moon viewing is the biggest event. We attract usually 12 to 1,500 people. So usually, full moon is one day, but we couldn't accommodate that large numbers. So we decided to do day before and day after, so 3 days. This is by far the biggest event we have. Actually, I'm going to show you. So you can see the mountain here. That's what we call Mount Hood. It's actually 9,000 feet tall mountain. Look like almost like a Japanese Mount Fuji. And straight east, the moon comes straight up behind this mountain. So it's just spectacular. And of course, bonsai exhibitions. This is outdoor ones. And Portland has a very wonderful and active bonsai club in Portland. And I'm sure maybe this San Diego and California is very also the common having the bonsai clubs. And bamboo fence building workshop. So basically we have 3 different sort of level of the sort of workshop or some sort. One is typically homeowners and weekends or Saturday, Sunday, 2 days at most. All kind of prunings and bamboo fence and stonework and those type of things. And in the intermediary is the 3-4 days design workshop. So this is for often sort of the beginning designer and student comes for the 3-day intensive. And then last one is for the professionals, 2 to 3 weeks. And that's really actually the professional, those who are working for public Japanese garden elsewhere or practitioners or landscape contractor. And of course we have exhibition and for every age. This is so funny. This little boy was there for almost half an hour. So I was watching and I didn't bother to ask him what he's thinking. But obviously he's seeing something. And same thing to the right, the little girl. This is the Japanese calligraphy exhibition. And she was too, just standing and mom and dad was asking her, let's go. And she's just standing and watching. So I really believe it's something, especially something beautiful and interesting, really capture their imagination. So they are in a different world and they see something that we're not probably seeing, but they're seeing something. So we have a lots of actually program for kids as well. And then this is the last part. And we started 2016 International Japanese Garden Training Center. What it is there are over 200 public Japanese garden in North America alone. So if you add Europe and elsewhere, obviously there's one more digit, thousands of public Japanese garden actually exist throughout the world. So there's lots of people, gardeners and horticulturists working for those gardens. They need a training. And it's hard and expensive to, for instance, go to Japan and then get the proper training. So the Portland Japanese Garden decided to actually start this school. It's all in English. So it makes a big difference if someone going to Japan meets great masters there, but they don't speak English, so it's all through the translation or just watching the demonstration, as opposed to our program is really hands-on. We take only up to 18 students in each seminar and 4 instructors. So basically, teacher and student ratio is 1:4, 1:5 at most. And then 8 to 5 every day for 2 to 3 weeks. And we do all, not just the Japanese gardening, but we talk about and experience the Japanese cuisine, food, and tea ceremonies, all related art, for them to understand the sort of cultural context, not just the gardening. And this is our tea garden, and we have quite few tea practitioners in town, so they help us to actually teach our students the basic sort of tea cultures and aesthetics. So you can see the students, we have a short tea ceremony every morning before we start going out to do the practice. And of course the design class, and of course lunchtime comes we have a wonderful Japanese chef in town. So she always prepared the bento, the lunch box for us. And then she gave a short talk about food, how we deal with, how we decorate, how we present. It's all related, basically same aesthetics underpinning all Japanese art. So the gardener, for myself too, I do practice the flower arrangement and tea ceremony. That's given almost. Every Japanese gardener goes through those trainings because it's a basically same aesthetics and design sensitivity applies to all. Stepping stones and water basins, and it's really fun. And we usually invite 1 or 2 instructors from Japan. So this year we have a last week of July 23rd to 31st. This week is short. After 2 years of the COVID, we have to restart everything. So we made this session a little shorter than usual. But we'll have already 12 students sign up, and 4 of them from outside of US. 1 coming from Brazil, and like Costa Rica, and the London's Kew Gardens staff is a regular attendance of this workshop. It's really fun to deal with the stone, and it's very heavy and awkward, but it's very rewarding. The first and most important thing is to just train their level of patience. The stones, they are not much negotiable, so you have to work with. So this is the final product. Some of the stone pavement, stepping stone, and water basin. She's a teacher, tea master, and she actually used each the products of this construction and then tested, because water basin has to be a certain distance and certain height to use it with wearing a kimono. So basically she's testing each basin, how they set. So last 2 slides are just there's an organization called North American Japanese Garden Association. We started 2012. And for instance, like York Garden and Balboa Park, San Diego Friendship Garden is a member. So there's now, I believe, you can see these dots are the location of the public Japanese garden. There's a quite bit. And of course, you can see how dense in the West Coast, California, and up on the Northwest, East Coast. And again, these are the, I think currently we have over 400 members. So both including the actually practicing gardeners as well as those who are interested in Japanese garden. So it's a mix of the group. And we have regional workshop, usually 3-4 different locations each year. And then in between year is the General Assembly and the conference. So this is the first part, and of the, again, and about Portland Japanese Garden and activities. If you have any question, or we can wait until the end. Maybe then I need to switch. Oh, thank you. So I need to switch to another PowerPoint. I think maybe he can. Thank you. Yes. Yes, actually, I'll talk about, let's look at the images here, right? So here it is. Many parts of the U.S. is like this dry garden is much more conducive to build than lots of trees. And in short, to your question answer is really it's something to do with the water and rocks. So those two combined, I mean, those are the very special element in all different culture. You can see up to the left is, this is actually during Jobon period, which is basically 4-5 century BC. So obviously that's a huge rocks. They moved, they stacked up, and there's a chamber, large rooms underneath. So that was, I believe, the place for the worshipping. And this is, of course, Stonehenge. So the rocks and stone has been a special place in our heart in different culture. And same, the water. This in southern Japan, Hiroshima, you can see Torii Gate. So this is a shrine, this shrine here, and Torii Gate is here. So you might feel strange the way Torii Gate is in the ocean. What it is this kind of shrine. Shrine is not the ultimate destination. The building is a demarcation of the particular location to worship. So in this case, the subject for the worshiping is ocean. So therefore, the gate stands in ocean, and the building stands on the land side and looking through the gate. So water has been also very important natural element throughout different cultures, and particularly in Japan. So water combined with the stone has been really the fundamental theme and where Japanese garden actually started. So this is one of the temples in Kyoto, the Saihoji Temple, you might have heard, known as the Moss Temple. So we believe this is the original and the first garden basically representing the rocks and the water. But the water, there's no presence of water. Therefore, the dry garden. So water is suggested by way of placing the rocks in such a way that mimics the natural, the mountain streams or lake. So in the large pictures, you can clearly see the this is a creek. And these borders represents basically the rocks actually forming the creek. is the water, again, imaginary water and coming down and coming to the pond. So this is the first sort of what we know of the dry garden, the original. And then from this point, this is right on probably for early 15th century. And still, you can visit this place in Kyoto. And then eventually it develops much more. So it started more mimicking or copying the natural feature, whether it's creek or lake. Then that becomes much more sophisticated in design. And then like oceanscape, in this case, with islands, right? So it becomes much more symbolic. And then it was a very common sort of style gardens at the monastery, at the Zen monastery in Kyoto in particular. So one thing is the Kyoto doesn't have abundance of water. So having the water is very difficult in Kyoto. So the one way the Buddhist monk found the garden is basically sort of imaginary water and oceanscape. So that's what this is. So this is built in 1450. And then sometimes the vegetation, simple vegetation, you can see these are ground-covered mosses, and these are Japanese maples. So this particular one is my family has been maintaining for the last probably 100 some years. But they inherited, this garden is actually 700 years old. So there's a multiple gardens families involved in the maintenance of it. So old parts, even my dad, there he wasn't allowed to touch the original portion. So this is in southern part of Kyushu, from Japan. This is our own Portland Japanese gardens, dry gardens. So this is again, this 3 by 3 squares. It's a lot of work and precision. So when gardeners trying to rake this one, when I'm standing in one particular position that I can see where the line is straight or not. And they get really nervous because Sada is standing in the location. That means he knows. So they have to be precise. So a little bit of snow, you can see the light dust of snow really assume the shape of this raked pattern. Okay, here's a little for your, maybe you can take a note, and that's on board of the how to rake and type of gravel. It's some technical information. So we have 2 rakes. This one is probably about 20 pounds. It's pretty heavy. The reason being 3-4 inch thick gravel, you need a weight to actually dig into. If it's this light, aluminum or thin wooden rake, you have to really push down to actually dig the rake into the gravel. So this 20 pounds weight really help. Then still we will adjusting the amount of weight to put, depending on how much, how deep the patterns need to be. So he's actually, in this case, he's pushing down. It's put the more pressure because this gravel is about 4/4 inch in diameter. You need to have a good amount of weight to actually create the decent patterns. So you can see different gravel. Oftentimes, the homeowners, I get the phone call all the time in a very common question. And I have a grubber, I spray the grubber, but it doesn't hold the pattern. So she was using the pea grubber. The round grubber won't work, has to be jagged and broken pieces. So that's the one key. And the second is the consistent size. For instance, usually quarter inch, somewhere quarter inch and half inch is a good size. But you need what we call minuses, meaning smaller pieces, to fill in the gap. Otherwise, all like a quarter inch size gravel, raindrop will actually crash. But if you have a smaller pieces in between as you rake, and that hold the shape. So, and if you can find a nice gravel chips like this, what I found is there's one source in Canada. So we are actually getting these chips in a bag from Canada. But the much closer location is in the south, North Carolina, Georgia. And you go to the feed store and ask the turkey grit. That's what, because no one is making the gravel for the gardener. So the closest and the best substitute I found is either chicken grit is a little too small, but the turkey grits, they feed, this gravel for turkey. So that works perfect. And so, so now we're buying actually this from North Carolina. And this feed store owner is wondering what the heck, we ordered 3 tons, 3 bags of 1 ton size. And they're wondering whether we actually have a turkey or So this, you can see to the right, has a little smaller pieces mix. Actually, this is imported from Japan, from Kyoto. And this is a natural, actually came out of the natural streams. So it has all kinds, 1/16 inch, 1/8 inch, and ½ inch, and so all sizes. So it works beautifully. And to the right is the crushed ones, the broken pieces. And this is the second best. But again, without smaller pieces, you have to rake more often. And even the watering, actually raindrops, the water drop actually crashes. Right. So you can see the patterns in a close look at, you can see all different sizes. And if you have a right mix of the gravel, actually, another question is the people wondering how gardeners, rake from there, 30 feet out, and you can actually walk. It holds the human weight. But you have to put the feet straight up and down. Then they can actually hold. So you don't leave the footprint. And you can actually rake from that end to this end. And it's a biggest one of the annual events for our volunteers. We have, hundreds some volunteers. And again, public gardens without volunteers cannot survive. And we have a really dedicated volunteers. And they come, and this is a once a year clean up, picking the debris and little dark gravels out of the white gravel. I keep the buckets of this, debris and gravels right next to my desk and actually thanks them. This is a very special group of people support the garden. Some of them are actually much, much longer than my tenure. And they've been doing and coming to the garden for 20, 30 years. And if you come and visit Portland in the right time, we do have a workshop of the raking. This is the only time actually non-gardener can get into the garden. So this is a rare. Usually we takes only 15, 16 people. This sells almost within 20 minutes once because some people knows this comes and they're waiting and write it in front of the computer and then push the button to buy the ticket. But it's a lot of fun. So you clean, flatten, and then before raking, then this is, you can see he's really pushing down. It actually takes a lot of energy to actually, even his line is a little wiggly, but so drawing the straight line is a lot of work. Yeah, he was surprised how much pressure he has to put to make imprint. So that's that. So the left side is the lighter weight. So you can see the gardener, she has to put a lot of pressure to make. Whereas the right side, because that's 20 pounds, the rake, you can see how actually pressured and make a great footprint. And this is the last pictures, I think, our garden. So maybe I can take any questions you may have. Oh. Underneath? Yes, good question. The traditional ones, no the underlayment at all. The question is, what's underneath the gravel? Oftentimes you have concern about the weed coming through, and which is true. Some part of our garden we do have weed barriers underneath, but where the gravel is thick enough, that prevents actually weeds. Portland Japanese garden is 100% organic, so we don't use the chemical to suppress the weeds. So you see the volunteers. So that's the part we have almost 2 full-time volunteers on the sand and stone gardens. Basically taking the weeds out. And so yeah, you can. One of the issue is if you put any plastic or anything underneath, in fact, you feel actually there's something slippery underneath. So it doesn't rake well because it's slipping. So you grab the more gravel and pull out. So that's why if it's thick enough, then you are just making the patterns on the top 2 inch. So then you can leave the footprints there. But if it's a 2 inch or less, if there is a plastic underneath, you ended up actually pulling all gravel out because it slips, right? So it's a kind of, both and good and bad. Of course, Japan is a small country, the small houses. So, but wherever they can, even the smallest possible space, they create the garden. But the public gardens, many recently actually, there is a sort of revival of the sort of Japanese gardens on the public space because the always concern was the maintenance. Because in general, our impression is very labor-intensive garden. That is the Japanese garden. So public park and the public officials are always concerned about the maintenance costs. But it's depending on the design and type of vegetation, you can make a fairly low maintenance garden. So there's a revival, and there's a lot of public park is using the Japanese design now. And mostly the public park, because again, the home it is small, and most people don't have a space. No, actually, people still prefer the vegetation, right? Because it's smaller it is, it's more precious the green is, right? Good, good. I like that there's someone designer in the audience because that's a good question. The bottom line is, we talk about the Japanese garden, lots of symbolisms, and this represents and this and that. Is mostly the interpretation, not in the gardener's head. So in other words, gardeners, garden designers, usually, talking about myself, focus purely on the basic contrasting, balancing, all those things. And we are not thinking this is the theme and representing something, therefore setting the rocks this way or that way. It's the other way around. Right. After the fact, we design the garden, and one interpretation of is in such that symbolize something. So I think, in particular, the recent and current practice is not start with a sort of theme, but also just the pure design concern and aesthetics. Right. Sure. Lots. And as I said, 200 some publicly accessible Japanese garden in North America alone. One more digit or two more digit numbers in the private space, because you don't have access. That's why you don't see much. But there's a lot, right? But in most cases, it's not necessarily purely the Japanese style, but the sort of Japanese influence or using the Japanese aesthetics type of things, especially something to do with dealing with rocks and stones. The Japanese gardening, Japan is the only nation utilizing the natural rocks as is, as opposed to cut or dimensioned, right? So those techniques dealing with the natural borders has been developed in Japan fairly long time. So like those castle wall, the only cornerstone we fabricate, because corner has to be sharp, but all other stones are natural stone, right? And so, yeah, I think there's let's think this way, like if you go to even the commercial facilities, in particular if you go, maybe less here, but the Pacific Northwest, if you go to the Walgreens parking lot, there's a rocks sitting in a natural, looks like a Japanese garden. So there's a big influence, definitely, when you see the natural borders arranged in such a way to represent the garden. It's definitely the Japanese garden influence, big time. And in Portland, every corner, no matter what, it's the commercial buildings or Kmart or something, then all of a sudden, and we don't know, but when I have a guest from Japan, and they said, what's going on, what they're doing in the natural rock, because they can identify this, right, rocks arranged in a certain way, right? So, and also I have my own practice beside being the chief curator at the Portland Japanese Garden. So I do have quite a few projects, actually private residence throughout different parts of the country. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. So tea ceremony as a system was developed during 14th, 15th century. So the garden exists before. So what we see, what we call Japanese garden, such as stone arrangement and the water basin, stone pavements, stepping stone, that's all tea garden. So what we call Japanese garden is actually, in essence, a tea garden. It started 14th, 15th century. So Japanese garden before is much more naturalistic. Doesn't have a stepping stone, doesn't have all features we identified as a Japanese garden. So tea plays a very big role in the development of garden. So most of the feature, bamboo fence, for example, that's the actually come out of the tea garden. So didn't exist before. So the tea ceremony and tea aesthetics and serving of the tea gathering really accumulates all sort of tradition and the values into a very particular system. So tea garden is really essentially the roots of what we call Japanese garden today. All those elements are from the tea garden. They didn't exist before. Mm-hmm. I think it's common because we have tea in everyday life, not just those particular ceremonial settings. And the tea started as really the commoners. Of course, the high art down to the popular art. Same thing in Japan. It was started as an aristocrat sort of social to begin with. And then when the commoners start to sort of practicing the tea, they didn't have a fancy facility or big space. So they start to develop the new sort of more rustic form of tea. And that is more to do with really it's a common space, for short, actually, tea house. So during, for instance, Civil War, tea house is the place for negotiation. So the ground rule in tea house is, for instance, a tea house is in basically 4.5, typically tatami mat, small, 15 feet square. And then away from, right in the garden. So for instance, two enemies, they have to leave their retainers out there. No weapons, you have to leave weapons there. When you go into the tea house, you are a person meeting with a person. No weapons whatsoever. So you have to really talk the bottom line. And it's very vulnerable. You don't have any weapons. You can get killed if someone has. So there's a great deal of trust has to be in place. So once you go into the tea garden, you are just as vulnerable and as small as one human being. All of a sudden, you are no longer shogun or samurai warrior. Your retainers and weapons are way out. And so that's how, so tea actually serves a lot of actually peacemaking. So in Portland Japanese garden, we are trying to bring that tradition back. The garden as a basically place for peacemaking. And where people get together, can talk something hard to talk about, politics and all other things. And the garden is a wonderful venue. So that's really the tradition from the tea culture. And the garden reflects that. Exactly. We are, yes, absolutely. We like to propose a tea house there. And so, finally, just one things I like to share is Portland Japanese Garden will sort of start a new, I would say, initiative we call Japan Institute. So this is exactly the basically peacemaking mission. And we believe the garden can serve for that purpose, maybe in a very small way, but a much more actually meaningful way. And our garden started again after the World War II, exactly for that purpose, 1963. And then after 60 years, there was no board member is Japanese anymore. So it's totally, it's of the Portland, of the Oregon, or the Pacific Northwest. The garden is basically embedded and basically as a part of the Northwest and Portland and United States. So I think we believe the garden has the ability to bring people together. So this Japan Institute will actually launch this initiative in this, actually next month in June. So American Public Garden Association conference, APGA conference is coming to Portland, so we are hosting. And that's basically this, we launched the Japan Institute. And then also same purpose, what we call Peace Symposium in September in Tokyo. And the third Peace Symposium is in London at Kew Garden in December. And next year we'll move to South America, Brazil, and Australia, and Africa, and all. So please check our website and you'll see the announcement. And we're very excited about bringing the garden yet another level and do something as opposed to just being the pretty garden, but actually serving and with a great mission. Thank you.
So I hope you all have a wonderful summer, and I hope you all come back refreshed in the fall to help us make the society very special and to achieve all our goals and our missions. And those of you who are staying for lunch, I think everything will be ready next door in the social hall. Have a lovely summer.